in just a second, I'm going to be introducing author Kaela Coble. Finally, her and I have been going back and forth. We had Skype issues and scheduling issues, and I was I was thinking if I have to go a whole weekend without talking to somebody about this book, I am like bursting. So I cannot wait to talk to her. So everybody, here is Kaela. Hi everyone, I am so excited to be speaking with Kaela Coble, finally, after a whole week of waiting. And we're going to be talking about her book called Friends and Other Liars.
Yes.
She's got the book. Oh, I love that cover. Oh my God, I love it. Love it. I was bursting. I was like, if we didn't get to talk about this week, I don't know what I would have done, because I kept trying to talk to other people about it. I'm like, no, you have to read this book. No, let me tell you about this book, because it is like, I don't know. It just touched me, because I think that high school now I'm 53. Okay. I'm way older than you, but there is something about those high school years.
Yes.
Don't you know, which is like when somebody writes a book about them, and I haven't read one in a long time. And so when you wrote that, I was like, yeah, I mean, there's something like, and of course you wrote it in a very haunting way, but it's like, but it does haunt, I love the premise of this. I mean, it was kind of like The Big Chill, but not.
Yes, I had The Big Chill in mind when I wrote this, actually.
Did you?
I had always wanted to write sort of this story because it's really, not my experience, but a lot of things that I did experience with my friends. And I always wanted to write about it, and I was like, yeah, but how can I write about it? And then I was reading this People magazine or something, at my hairdresser's, and there was a 30th anniversary of the Big Chill movie, and I'd never seen it, but I was big all the actors, and I saw the description, and I was like, oh, I'm like, one of them's gonna be dead. Then they're all gonna come back together, and so that's sort of how it came about. It was kind of funny. So it's funny that you mentioned the Big Chill.
Yeah, well, and because I lived The Big Chill, and I got to see it in a movie theater when it came out, okay?
Yeah.
And it was huge. It was huge. As a matter of fact, I just watched it again recently because the music is so amazing, and it's so it reminded me of that. But just so everybody knows, it is different, okay? Because it's got more of a thriller. The Big Chill is fun and. This is got a little bit of tension going on.
Just a little bit of drama.
Just a little bit of drama going on. So I was explaining this to somebody, because I always talk about the books I'm reading, and I'm like, oh my God, this book. Okay, so get this. The guy dies, okay? He commits suicide. And then they all come to his funeral, and he has envelopes. And they have a choice of whether to tell their secret or I get it read in front of everybody. And everybody's like, what? I'm like, I know. So when you pitched that, was your publisher like, oh my God, yeah, write that?
Well, so I actually wrote the book. Oh God, I don't know. It took me a long time to get an agent. So I had already come up with it. And then, but yeah, that was in my, when you're trying to get an agent, you write the query letter. And so it was in my query, and that was in the top, this is what the concept was. And I got a pretty good response, but it took me a really long time to find an agent who actually wanted to represent it. Cause, I don't know. I mean, it just takes a long time for somebody to be they want it so bad, and they love the pages so much. So yeah, but I think I got a lot of interest because of the concept, for sure. And every time I tell people what it's about, they're like, ooh.
Exactly.
As much as you hate as a writer, when people ask you to kind of pitch your book, there's this thing that happens inside you, oh, I don't want to tell you, I don't want to share it. But definitely, I always get that reaction, ooh, I want to read that. That sounds juicy. So.
I know, it does. And I was on my class reunion committee for a long time. I did that for a while, and now we just have this Facebook page, but we talk about everybody who's died, because as I get older, people keep dying.
I'm not looking forward to that. That's what my parents talk about, and I'm like, oh, that sounds really cheery.
And it just kind of happens. You don't want to, but it just happens. And then we start sharing memories about the person, and but when I was reading this, and I was just like, Ooh. Now I graduated with like 500 people. I never really had like a clique like that.
Mm.
Had.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of was moved, depending on what I was doing at the time. But
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of like these people
Yeah.
being like so close.
Yeah, and what's interesting is this is really based on a group of friends that I had, but I also was like that. Like I kind of wanted, and so that's why I kind of really identify with you, because I kind of wandered in and out of that group over the years, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go party with these people, or I'm gonna hang out and be chill and introspective over here. And so I think that is what Ruby and I had in common, is that we always sort of felt like we're in it, but we're not really in it, and we can separate ourselves from it because of whatever reason. For Ruby's reason, she had a lot of heartache around it. For me, it was like exploring kind of outside of the box. So yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I just loved as it unfolded, like everybody's things. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was so good, and I love the first line though. I just want to tell everybody the first line because I love a first line. Okay, if I can find one, and I don't find them in every book. You'd think like I know that that's like writing 101. Come up with a good first line or good first paragraph or something. But some people I'm finding like that's not really a thing. But when I find one, okay, so this is how I knew this book was going to be amazing. Look at them, I'm dead, and they're still pissing me off. I love that. I was like, oh my god.
You don't know what happens after that, right? You're right. Like, wait, what?
And he gets to be a character. Like he's dead,
yeah.
But he gets to be a character. I love that concept.
Yeah, and he is a character. He has a lot of things to say. He has a lot of kind of judgments, and he's kind of stored up all these things about these people over the years. And it's sort of like what everybody does. You store up all of these, you know things about people, and you have these secrets, and you have these hurt, people have hurt you and helped you and all that stuff, and you sort of store that up, but you're not always saying it. And so Danny sort of at the end of his life was just like, well, screw it, I'm going to say it. Like I'm mad at these people because of these reasons. And he's in especially the beginning of the book, he's like you said, he's dead, but he's sort of in this, like, he's just died, and he's sort of still in this really angry place,
right?
And so he actually still gets to kind of evolve, even though he's dead, because I'm a writer, so I can do that.
You can do that, right? You can make him you can
decide that you can still evolve after you're dead. Sure, why not? Right. So that's what I kind of like about, he sort of evolves along too.
He does.
It's not really about his journey, but he gets to be there and experience that along with his friends.
Right. And, what I thought was interesting is like, when you've had people that hurt you in high school, right? But you like, if somebody told you, like, I think I was pretty good in like, I was like, I tried to be the best person I could be, the best friend I could be. But, and it's like, so you kind of take that on. I felt like he kind of like, but I was so good. Like, I tried to be a good friend to everybody. And I think it's funny because as a kid, like, you do think that. You think that you're, if somebody came to you and said, well, you did this one really mean thing, I'd be like, what? Oh, you took that all wrong. It wasn't meant to be mean.
Yeah. It's very hard as a kid and a teenager, especially because as a teenager, you're so focused on yourself.
Yeah.
Like you kind of move through that. You're focused on like fitting in. And then as you get a little older, you're focused on, differentiating. But it's very hard to be that self-aware when you're young to see like really how your actions are affecting other people, because you're really so concentrated on like, how's it affecting me? Because you have so many feelings.
I know. And that's why I thought it was so great, because I have 6 children. So 5 of them have been through high school. And, and I've had to watch them. As a matter of fact, my 2 oldest children are sons. And when they were going through high school and going through breakups, and they would cry, I used to be like, you think the guys that I broke up with cry? Like, I was like this whole...
like, so all of a sudden, like, wait a second. There's another side to all the things that I experienced.
I never ever thought... I always thought that that guys just were like, okay, I'll go get another girlfriend. No big deal.
Person. Yeah.
But when I saw them being upset, I remember like, whoa, they're like upset. They're really upset about this.
Because they're teenagers, they have so many feelings. You just feel all the feelings all the time, and everything is so intense. And I think that's why it was really fun for me to write this, because I had to tap into a lot of the ways that I felt, which, sometimes were hard, but also there's like an excitement about that drama of high school, like I don't miss it by any means, but when you're older, things are just more settled and I'm happy and that's great. But when you're a teenager, it was like these highs and lows, and the highs were so high and then the lows were so low. And there's something really fun to write about that. Like as a writer, you don't want to write about the happy, you want to write about like this. So
right. And I wanted to ask you that too. Like, what did you find? What was your more favorite part of writing it as adults? Or because I was like, I think it'd be really fun.
I always thought about that. I think, the high school chapters were more fun to write. I mean, the whole thing was actually kind of a blast to write, which is why I think that I think that's why people are liking it, because it's fun for me to write. It's hopefully going to be fun for people to read. So I really had a blast because I was really exploring like these relationships, and I was borrowing a little bit from my relationships, but also they became their own characters and the things that were going to happen to them and how they were interacting with each other. So I really liked that, like that exploration of like, ooh, what would happen if all of our secrets were coming out and we had these secrets, because that was all made up. So that was fun. And then going back to high school and kind of drawing from those emotions and things that happened and making up things that didn't happen, that was fun too. So I think the whole thing was fun. I think for me, the most fun part was writing through other perspectives. Because Ruby, as I said, she's not me, but she had a lot of my experiences. So most of the book is through Ruby's perspective. So that's why that makes sense. But it was fun to kind of, and I didn't plan this. I didn't sit down and say, I'm going to write through these different perspectives. I just sat down to write this piece that I wanted to write. And Allie's voice came out. I was like, oh, it literally, like, I heard her voice say, I think there's something going on with Ruby and Hardy Crane. And it just came out, and I was like, well, I guess I'll just write this, and then I'll probably delete it. But then I was like, oh no, this is actually really fun. So I almost wish I had done a little more of that. And maybe if there's ever a sequel, I'll do more of it.
There is a way to do that, because you get to do that because you're the writer. But I wanted to tell everybody, because it was so confusing on Amazon, so I want to clear this up for all your fans, that there's a book called Friends and Other Liars, and then there's this other book out there, and I guess I found out, is that the UK?
It's the UK version. So
that is so confusing for me. I hate when the UK does this, okay? Because it just shows up and I'm like, what is that? What was it, a sequel? And then I tried to get it and I was like,
and that's funny because I never thought of that. But okay, so the story is, I had this weird situation that doesn't usually happen to authors, is that my first book offer was from a UK publisher. Okay. So that just happened first. And then the US offer came maybe 6 weeks later. And they're two separate deals. So usually you get the US deal, and then after that they kind of sell off the rights to the other territories. But because it was a separate deal, it was almost like it was two separate books. So the US version has a few extra chapters. It's been edited several more times. So there's just a lot more. Danny is a little more present in the US version than in the UK version. He really kind of just bookended the UK version. And as you said, the UK version is just called Friends and Liars.
Right. And
a lot of my friends, when I said Friends and Other Liars is coming out, they thought, and Other Liars, oh, that's the sequel. And I was like, oh, I never even thought about that. But I definitely was like, next time as we go forward, can we have them come out at the same time and have the same title? And so it did get confusing, and some people, and the UK version came out in June, and this US version didn't come out till just a few weeks ago.
Until February.
So yeah, it is confusing, but it's the same.
And then that made me think, because I was like, well, I got to get this other book because I want to read that first.
Yeah.
But it does sound like a sequel, doesn't it? It's like Friends and Liars and then Friends and Other Liars. I was like, oh.
I know, and I never had thought about that. I always was like, it's confusing, but I never thought, oh, it sounds like a sequel, but.
Right.
So hopefully there will be a sequel.
So. Right, now we can just straighten that out for everybody.
I'm like, if enough people push for it, I'll get to write a sequel.
I think there's a sequel there. I really do.
I have a lot of ideas. Like, I'm working on other things, because in this genre, it's not typically serialized like young adult, straight young adult is. And so my agent and editors were like, well, just write something else, and then if this is really successful, then we can see how it goes. But I'm like, I have plans for a second and third in my head.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What genre do they have it under? I didn't even look. Usually I look that up.
It's always different. So when I went, I was actually in London when it came out. Actually on my delayed honeymoon, and it was under crime fiction, and I was like, what? Because I had thought of it as women's fiction,
Right.
but then a lot of people think of it as YA, which makes sense, because like half the book it pretty much is set in high school.
Right.
Then so I was thinking women's fiction, and then they were like, it's women's fiction / YA, and then they started marketing it more as like thriller, which I was kind of like, well, it's not really a thriller, like, I don't know. In my mind, I wasn't thinking it was. It definitely has suspense.
It has suspense.
Genre's a weird thing. It's not
really,
always what
really
you think.
Is. And I don't always like Amazon's. My daughter uses them when she's going to be posting this video. She uses them for tags.
Yes.
And we don't always agree, which is funny because we'll go in and be like, that wasn't crime. There was no crime committed.
That's what really worries people as writer. Like as a writer, I'm like, well, I don't want this to be in crime fiction. And then someone pick it up and be like, well, this isn't crime. This sucks.
Right.
Like,
and then
I don't
all of
want.
a sudden, you get a 1 star from somebody saying that wasn't crime.
Yeah, and I have seen a few. I don't read all my reviews. Like I'll kind of skim them.
Right.
If I'm having a bad day or something, I read the good reviews. But there are some people in a review that was in my newspaper that was like, well, this isn't really a thriller, but it's good anyway. So I was like, okay, well, at least it's kind of transcending that. But yeah, there are some people that are going to that would maybe be disappointed. That was what I was worried about. They were like, it'll be fine.
Right.
So
I know. And you have no control. So it's just,
you really have no control.
The UK thing has always just confused me because I do have a lot of authors that I talk to in the UK, and then they'll have American, like it just is like somehow they're not talking in this age of computers, which is
totally
like
different things. And I mean, the UK, they were just like, yeah, we like it as is. I mean, they went through copy edits and stuff, but we didn't go through a big editorial content edit. And with the US, we went through a couple versions. So I was, I love both, but I am like, well, the US version. As a writer, like, the more you edit, the better the book gets, obviously. So I'm like, read the one that's edited more.
Right, exactly. You're like, before you review that, can you read the really edited one?
Yeah, can you read this? I've edited a couple of times. Maybe you might like that one better.
Right. Well, before I let you go, I did want to talk about your coaching business because on your website, I didn't get to really look at it, but I wanted to talk to you about it. Like, is it a writing coaching or is it like a life coaching?
I do mostly writing and career coaching. So a lot of what I do is writing resumes. I'm a writer, so I like to be behind the computer. I do writing and cover letters and kind of talk to people what they want to do, so I know how to kind of market them. Mm-hmm. I do have a marketing background, so that's kind of where that comes from. But I also do writing coaching. I just feel like, especially because I've been through the process of trying to get an agent and trying to get published, and it's just a real grind, that there's, some people just need a little guidance on like how to get started and how to keep going and all of that. So there's a little coaching around that. And then I do like query letter critiques, and I'll do like manuscript critiques now. So I'm by no means an expert, but I think that I've gotten used to giving and receiving feedback in a way that is constructive and hopefully can like help you be excited about, going back to your project.
Right. Well, that's good to know because there are so many writers that just don't know. Like they have the book and they're like, what do I do? Now,
there's a lot of information on the internet, but some people so I always was like, well, who's going to listen to me because it's on the internet already. But some people, there's a lot of information on the internet, and I'm not saying I always have the right answers, but I have my experience. And when you're just looking around online, it can be really discouraging because everybody just says, oh, you're never going to get published, and that's there's just like a lot of negativity about the process that I feel like, you could look at it in a different way. Right. When I got negative feedback from agents, I was like, well, that means they're actually taking the time to read it and respond to me. And this is something that I can take in and say, okay, this feels right to me. This feels exciting to edit. And this doesn't feel right. And so it's kind of learning how to not be so sensitive, which is the hardest thing, but kind of take things constructively and grow from it rather than let it kind of get you down.
And sometimes people just want to talk. You don't want to just read about it or watch a YouTube on it. You
Yeah.
just want to talk to somebody.
Yeah, you want to hear about like other people's experience and how they felt about this. And I think there's also a lot of power in, there's the whole #MeToo movement, but you could say it for anything. There's a lot of power in knowing that other people have experienced what you're experiencing and that they made it through it, and that they still, got what they needed out of it. So sometimes that's just nice.
And you know what? I went on Barnes and Noble today. This was like eye-opening for me because I always use Amazon, but
yeah,
I'm always looking to see what books are released when. And I have a hard time. Amazon is not clear. Like they don't have like I want dates, and Barnes and Noble does. Okay, like they have a tab, and and they give you the release dates. Which to me, as a reader, I was like, I almost cried. I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect.
Thank you,
thank you, universe, for answering my request. But on the other side, I saw how many books are released, and I was like, oh my goodness. So when I tell an author like I found you. Like, I mean, it means something when somebody finds you. Like,
it's huge.
Like.
I mean, when I found out that I was going to be on the table in Barnes & Noble, that one in the front that's like new in paperback, because I didn't do a hardcover from right to paperback, I was like, oh my God, because that's the first place that I go. Right. Because I like paperbacks, they're right there, and they have all the pretty covers all at once, and I was like over the moon about that. But that doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to pick it up or notice it over like somebody's book that's really been out there for a long time and is established. When people say they found you, I'm like, oh my God. And no, like my mom didn't tell you about me.
Like, how many people did you call this week, Mom?
Like, especially because it's a big deal in my local community, because this book, The Chatwick, is sort of based on my hometown. And so I got a lot of local press around that. And Vermont is a small place, so when a new author comes out, it's more of a big deal. And so clearly I was like, well, my books are going to sell in Vermont and nowhere else. So then sometimes I'm reading on Goodreads like, oh, there's someone in India reading your book. And that's just like mind blowing to me.
What?
I'm like, what? Like somebody's in South Africa reading your book. I'm like, are you serious? Like, it's just kind of insane. So it's always wonderful to hear when people reach out and say that they liked it.
Yeah,
no matter
I'm pretty
where they
sure that I found you on Instagram because I have a lot of
book
people over there, book reviewers, and those are some hardcore people. Let me tell you, I think I read like I don't even that, and I'm like always amazed. But they'll like shoot me a thing like read this. I'm like okay, relax. I'm like, how do you guys read all
really overwhelming? Like
very overwhelming.
I was, you try to connect with book bloggers, especially as a debut author, to kind of build those relationships. And every time I went to a website, I was like, damn it, I have like 12 more books now that I have to read because the covers, and I'm like, God, this sounds so good. So it gets really overwhelming. And it's overwhelming as a writer, too, just knowing that there's all of that out there. And that's like another reason why it's nice when people actually find you, because there's so many options. There's so many good books out there. And a lot of people don't get to read 3 books a day like some of your are doing. I get to read like maybe 2 a month, like if I'm lucky. And so
you're writing.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm writing and I'm working and I'm coaching and I'm
doing other things.
Dog mom and
right. And I had interviewed this one guy a couple weeks ago, and I told him, I was like, I found you. I'm so happy I found you. And he's like, well, actually, I'm quite popular. And I'm like, okay, but guess what? I read at least a book a day, and I just found you. I don't care how popular you are. There are too many books. Like.
There's so many books. It's just like I read like you check like bestseller lists or whatever, or I'll find someone on Twitter and I'm like, wow, this person has like 20,000 followers and I've never heard of them, and so it feels kind of overwhelming. It's like, well, how do you become successful when like most people have never heard of you? It's kind of this weird concept, and writers are just different. Like, you have your own following based on what people like to read. So
and that's why I think like the social media part and the Instagram and Twitter and all those, like that it is a time when you should be so grateful because those people are out there and they are promoting, and like they help me. They're willing to help authors and any book to get out there, and I'm very grateful for those people. And I just think
the book community is like awesome, like super awesome. I'm having such a blast, like doing Q&As. Everybody asks different questions. I mean, I get maybe a couple that are repeats, but everyone asks these different questions. I'm like, wow, I actually have never thought of that. So it's really interesting because it makes me think about my book and my writing in a
Yes.
different way. So I'm having a blast with it.
Yeah, and I love how supportive they are with everybody. Like they just want to bring everybody in, and I think it's such a cool
Sure.
time because before, in when I was young, you just went to the library, okay?
Yeah.
Like and now it's like they're showing off the covers, they're showing off. I mean, it's just so cool. I just love it. So I
It's
am.
also because for some genres, like more commercial fiction, you don't get written up in the New York Times. You know,
Right,
that's used to be how you would get book reviews, is
right,
really in the magazines. And if you're a small debut author and you're not writing like the literary stuff that like the New York Times is going to review,
right.
how do you get out there?
Yeah,
So that's like the best part, is that it's giving a voice to like a different perspective, of different genre. So
yeah. So
yeah.
I am so happy I found you. I am so happy they
You
introduced.
found me too.
I know. I'm so happy they introduced me to your book. It was so much fun. Hold that book up. I want everybody to see it one more time before we go because that cover is so cool and I love giving it props to everybody who like makes covers because they put so much work into it and like
Yeah.
it's amazing. So thank you for talking with me
Thank
about
you.
this.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you
making it happen.
for sure.
Yeah, so we will be, when you have another book coming out, you find me. I will read it.
Fine.
I will. We can talk
That's on
about
my list.
it. All right. Thank you, Kaela. Have a great night.
You too. Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye. That interview was so much fun, and I'm losing daylight. Like, as we're talking, we're getting a storm in, and it's like all getting dark. But anyway, thank you. Thank you so much, Kaela. That was incredible. I'm so, so happy that we got to talk. And isn't she fun? This debut novel, I mean, you guys, I've got to get this book, okay? It is so good. But hopefully we've convinced you of that anyway. I will have all of Kaela's links under here. If you liked our video, please hit like. If you want to get updates on all my videos, please subscribe. Thank you, everyone.